Hollywood, Orlando, and Tampa. Palm Beach and St. Pete Clearwater International are also important airports in the national airspace system. In addition, Florida has a significant number of general aviation airports. You get the picture. Florida is one of the busiest states for aviation in the United States. The South Central Florida Metroplex is the FAA's plan to modernize air traffic procedures for 21 airports in the southern half of Florida. Many of the existing procedures are based on outdated technology. While safe, these procedures are less precise and efficient than those based on satellite technology. The satellite-based routes proposed for the Metroplex project will enhance safety and efficiency across the region. Metroplex will benefit passengers by creating more direct routes, decrease congestion at airports and in the air, improve air traffic flows, enhancing safety and efficiency, and reduce complexity and communication for air traffic controllers and pilots, making the system safer. Before we can change procedures, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, requires us to conduct an environmental assessment to determine the potential impacts of the proposed procedures. One purpose of NEPA is to ensure that proposals, alternatives, and environmental impacts of projects are fully disclosed to the public. That's why we're here today. On May 11th, the FAA posted the Draft Environmental Assessment, or EA, for the Metroplex, and we opened a 60-day public comment period that closes on July 10th. We hope that you will consider submitting comments about the document. On this website, you can click the Comments tab, and it will show you how to submit your comments. It provides email addresses and a physical address where you can send comments after the workshop. Be sure to get your comments in before the July 10th deadline. After the comment period closes, we will review and consider all substantive comments received during the comment period as we develop the environmental determination. We expect to issue the determination by September 30th, 2020. A note about the draft EA. The FAA identified inadvertent errors related to runway designations for Orlando, Tampa, and St. Pete Clearwater International Airports. We updated the document on May 13th, and it's posted at metroplexenvironmental.com. I'd like to cover 3 procedural items before we start. First, if you're having technical issues, you can text us anytime during the workshop at 949-478-0253 or click the Technical Support tab on this webpage. Second, the workshop will last 90 minutes. We are recording the workshop and it will be posted on this website tomorrow for you to review. You can share the link with friends and neighbors who are unable to participate today. And finally, we have experts available to answer questions about the draft EA and the proposed air traffic control procedures. FAA air traffic controllers, environmental specialists, and industry representatives will answer your questions after the presentation. As a reminder, the questions asked and answers provided here are not part of the official record for the draft EA. To comment for the official record, click on the Comments tab on this website. That will link you to the FAA's official comment page for this project. Now, Lisa Favors, an environmental specialist for the FAA's Air Traffic Organization, will brief us on the draft environmental assessment.
Thank you, Michael. I will explain the draft EA for the South Central Florida Metroplex. As mentioned earlier, we developed the document in accordance with NEPA, which requires us first to identify the purpose and need for the project. In this case, the purpose and need addresses the current inefficient arrival and departure procedures for airports in South Central Florida. Many of the existing procedures are based on outdated technology and are less precise and efficient than satellite procedures. We need to fix that. The draft EA identifies causes for inefficiency as lack of predictable routes or procedures to transition aircraft between airport runways and high altitude en route airspace, complex interactions between converging routes, and lack of flexibility for air traffic controllers as they transition flights between high altitude and low altitude airspace. By adopting new procedures, which the draft EA calls the proposed action, we expect reduced workload due to fewer controller-pilot communications, more efficient operations due to decreased complexity, and fewer flight segments resulting in more predictable traffic flows. A detailed explanation of the purpose and need is included in Chapter 2 of the draft EA. The draft EA analyzes potential environmental impacts from the proposed action and the no action alternative. It is important to note that we analyzed many additional procedures, but they not carried forward for detailed study in the draft EA because they did not meet the purpose and need or applicable safety standards. Under no action, procedures in place from June 2017 to May 2018 would remain except for planned modifications that are independent of the Metroplex. Our analysis determined that only the proposed action would meet the purpose and need for the project. The no action alternative would not meet the purpose and need, but it was included in the draft EA as required by Council on Environmental Quality Regulations. The alternatives are described in Chapter 3 of the draft EA. Affected environment describes the human, physical, and natural environmental conditions that the proposed action could affect. The affected environment is described in detail in Chapter 4 of the draft EA. The draft EA considers the effects on 14 environmental resource categories and their subcategories identified in FAA guidance. We evaluated the alternatives under conditions forecasted for 2021, the first year the proposed action could be implemented, and under the 2026 forecasted conditions. The evaluation considers the direct, indirect, and cumulative effects of the proposed action and no action alternatives. The draft EA determined that neither the proposed action nor the no action alternatives are likely to cause significant environmental impacts to any of the environmental resource categories. For more information, you can review Chapter 5 in the draft EA. The rest of my discussion will focus on the noise analysis since you, the public, expressed most interest in that. However, feel free to ask questions about any category during the Q&A session later in the workshop. First, I will explain how we measure noise. The FAA measures aviation noise using the day-night average sound level, DNL, metric. DNL represents noise as it occurs over a 24-hour period, with nighttime noise weighted more heavily than daytime noise. DNL is the standard noise metric used for studies of aviation noise exposure in communities. To account for differences in how people respond to noise, we use the A-weighted scale, DBA. This scale closely approximates the volume of sound as perceived by the human ear. The FAA considers aircraft noise exposure of 65 dNL in residential areas and noise increases of dNL 1.5 dB or more for noise-sensitive areas exposed to noise at or above the dNL 65 dB noise exposure level to be significant. The noise analysis demonstrates that the proposed action would not result in significant noise increases. More information about how the FAA measures noise is in Appendix E of the draft EA, and a detailed noise analysis can be found in Appendix I. Before I end, the following video will show you how to look up noise information for your address. You may search more than 122,000 grid points of noise data in the study area, presented in decibels, abbreviated as dB. The grid points are U.S. Census population points located at 1/2 nautical mile intervals across the entire study area. The map opens to the study area. In the search bar, start typing your address and similar addresses will pop up. Click on the correct address and you will see a light blue map pin. The map shows the model grid points in blue. Click on each point to see a pop-up with noise analysis results. The map shows data including dNL calculated for the alternatives and the change in noise when the proposed action is compared to the no action alternative. Now our air traffic control expert will brief you on some of the more significant procedures the Metroplex proposes for your area.
Hello, my name is Ryan, and I'm an air traffic controller who works at FAA's West Palm Beach International Air Traffic Control Tower and Radar Approach Control. In this section of the website, we will walk you through the flight procedure poster boards for Palm Beach International Airport and Boca Raton Airport. Each of the following boards shows a sampling of existing flight tracks and the proposed new flight procedures for jet aircraft. Each board will show either arrival or departure aircraft with current day tracks color-coded via altitude. The flight tracks and proposed procedures are all overlaid on a map of the surrounding area. Each flight procedure board is oriented with north facing up. The name of the airport and the names of the flight procedures are in the box on the upper right corner. The box also shows the type of operation, either arrival or departure, and the direction of flight, which we call flow, either east or west. Flow is related to the layout of the airport's runways. For example, east flow runways include runway 10 left and runway 10 right. These runways allow aircraft to land and depart eastbound towards the ocean. Runway 14 is also used in an east flow operation and allows aircraft to land and depart southeastbound. West flow runways include runway 28 right and runway 28 left. These runways allow aircraft to land and depart westbound. Runway 32 is also used in a west flow operation and allows aircraft to land and depart northwestbound. A few acronyms are used in the boards. Standard Instrument Departure, or SID, is a departure. A Standard Terminal Arrival, or STAR, is an arrival. Area Navigation, or RNAV, is the term used for modern satellite-based navigation technology in the proposed procedures. The spelling of each arrival or departure procedure is limited to only 5 letters. For example, the spelling of CAPTN is pronounced captain. The stars on the board are locations of waypoints, which are fixed navigational points in space that the aircraft fly to. Just as with the spelling of procedures, waypoints are spelled with only 5 letters. For example, JUUNO waypoint would be pronounced Juno. The proposed flight procedures are color-coded, purple for departures and orange for arrivals. These colored paths show the intended flight paths in the future for most flights using the new procedures. Surrounding the paths are dispersed path areas in either pink for departures or yellow for arrivals. These areas show the possible locations where aircraft may fly in the future and account for the possibility of different routing to avoid hazardous weather, for operational need, or for safety. The existing flight tracks are shown on the legend by color, starting from the lowest altitudes in pink, then blue, then teal, and finally the highest altitudes are shown in green. Here are examples of departure flight tracks departing Palm Beach International Airport to the east. Notice the colors changing and the respected altitudes associated with the colors. The flight tracks shown are a sample of jet aircraft operations, which occurred from January to May 2018 for Palm Beach and April to May 2018 for Boca Raton during the daytime, which does not include nighttime hours between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. The bullet points on the right side provide additional details about the procedures. Next, we'll take a look at each arrival and departure board for these airports. This flight procedure board shows Palm Beach International Airport East Flow arrivals and 4 proposed arrival procedures: the Captain, Clement, Sherby, and Mahi. As you can see, the proposed procedures mimic current day flight tracks airplanes fly today. East flow is the most common direction of traffic flow at Palm Beach International. Runway 10 left is used for the majority of operations for east flow, although runway 14 may be used as well. Aircraft arriving from the north use the Captain and Clement arrival procedures, and aircraft from the west and south use the Sherby and Mahi arrival procedures. Notice on this flight procedure board, air traffic controllers blend the Captain arrivals with the Clement arrivals to create a separated single file line to the runway for landing. For all the procedures, air traffic controllers may direct aircraft away from the procedure to avoid hazardous weather, for operational need, or for safety. The graphic on the upper left-hand corner shows a zoomed-in view of the arrivals. The graphic in the lower left-hand corner shows the existing color-coded radar tracks legend.
Hello, my name is Matthew, and I'm an air traffic controller who works at FAA's West Palm Beach International Air Traffic Control Tower and Radar Approach Control. This flight procedure board shows Palm Beach International Airport West flow arrivals and 4 proposed arrival procedures: the Captain, Clement, Sherby, and Mahi. West flow is the least common direction of traffic flow at Palm Beach International. Runway 28 right is used for the majority of operations for west flow, although runway 32 may be used as well. Aircraft arriving from the north use the Captain and Clement arrival procedures, and aircraft from the west and south use the Sherby and Mahi arrival procedures.
This flight procedure board shows Palm Beach International Airport east flow departures with destinations to the north. There are 3 proposed northbound departure procedures: the T-Bird, Slides, and O-Lake. Generally, aircraft with northeastern destinations will use the Slides departure, aircraft with destinations to the west use the O-Lake departure, and aircraft with north and northwest destinations use the T-Bird departure. The dotted pink line shows the path aircraft would use departing runway 14. Aircraft are either given navigational headings to fly by air traffic control or use the procedures as published. For reference, the current flight tracks are shown in pink, blue, and green based on their altitudes. As you can see, the majority of current flight tracks are reaching altitudes ranging from 6,000 to 10,000 or above at the Ahab waypoint before crossing over the shoreline northwestbound. Proposed procedures move Carmen waypoint further offshore, which will allow aircraft to possibly be higher than they are today crossing Ahab and the shoreline. This flight procedure board shows Palm Beach International Airport east flow departures with destinations to the south and west. There are 3 proposed departure procedures: the Mix-A, Buffet, and Welly. Generally, aircraft with eastern destinations use the Mix-A departure. Aircraft with southern destinations use the Buffet departure, and aircraft with western destinations use the Welly departure. The dotted pink line shows the path that aircraft would use departing runway 14. Aircraft are either given navigational headings to fly by air traffic control or use the procedures as published. For reference, the current flight tracks are shown in pink, blue, and green based on their altitudes. As you can see from the limited amount of flight tracks over the course of 5 months, these procedures are used less frequently than the other procedures for aircraft with destinations to the north.
This flight procedure board shows Palm Beach International Airport West flow departures with 3 proposed departure procedures: the slides, mixing, and buffet. West flow is the least common direction of traffic flow at Palm Beach International Airport. Runway 28 right is used for the majority of operations for West flow, although runway 32 may be used as well. Generally, aircraft with destinations to the northeast use a slides departure. Aircraft with destinations to the east use the mixed day departure, and aircraft with destinations to the south use the buffet departure. As you can see, the majority of current flight tracks are reaching altitudes at or above 10,000 feet at the Pirate waypoint before heading northeastbound offshore. This flight procedure board shows Palm Beach International Airport West flow departures with 3 proposed departure procedures: the T-Bird, O-Lake, and Welly. Generally, aircraft with destinations to the north use the T-Bird departure. Aircraft with destinations to the northwest use the O-Lake departure, and aircraft with destinations to the west use the Welly departure. This flight procedure board shows aircraft arriving to Boca Raton Airport using runway 5 and runway 23. Runway 5 is shown on the top, and runway 23 is shown on the bottom. There are 4 proposed arrival procedures that would be used for aircraft landing both runways: the Sherby, Captain, Clement, and Mahi. Aircraft arriving to the Boca Raton Airport will fly in the proposed procedures until an air traffic controller issues a navigational heading to guide the pilot to land runway 5 or runway 23. Arriving jet aircraft would typically fly along similar paths as they do today. Aircraft arriving from the east would use the Mahi arrival procedure. Aircraft arriving from the north would use the Captain or Clement arrival procedures, and aircraft from the west would use the Sherby arrival procedure. This flight procedure board shows aircraft departing Boca Raton Airport using runway 5 and runway 23. There are 2 proposed departure procedures that would be used for aircraft departing both runways: the Meisner and Terps. Generally, aircraft with north, west, and southwest destinations would use the Meisner procedure. Aircraft with northeast and east destinations would use the Terps procedure. When an aircraft departs either runway, an air traffic controller will give the pilot a navigational heading to follow to join the Terps procedure or join the Meisner procedure. Generally, aircraft will fly similar paths as they do today to get to these procedures.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second workshop, our Q&A session for Palm Beach on the South Central Florida Metroplex. So thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. I'm Michael O'Hara, the Regional Administrator for the FAA Southern Region, and I'm joined this afternoon by several technical experts, including Matt and Ryan, air traffic controllers from the Palm Beach Control Tower and Radar Approach Control. We have Lisa Favors, FAA Environmental Specialist, and several airport and industry representatives with us as well. As a reminder, we're holding this workshop to answer your questions about the South Central Florida Metroplex project. We're unable to answer questions about other topics in this workshop. Please submit questions about the Metroplex to us today live. You can use the Q&A box on Zoom or the links on Facebook or YouTube, or you can text your question to us at 949-478-0253. Again, that text number for a question is 949-478-0253. If you need technical assistance, please click on the technical support tab on the website. And I'd like to turn it over to Enrique for just a moment.
Gracias, Michael. Bienvenidos a la presentación del Aeropuerto Palm Beach International. Estamos disponibles a contestar o dar explicaciones en español para los que los necesiten. Solo tienen que mandar sus preguntas en texto al número 949-478-0253. Otra vez, 0253. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Enrique. All right, and thanks again, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to move right into our first question. Why isn't the FAA holding public meetings on the Metroplex, and why is the FAA moving forward with this project, especially with traffic so light as a result of COVID-19? All right, so one of the reasons that we can't hold in-person workshop at this time is because of public health official concerns and recommendations related to social distancing. we're advised against large gatherings of people, which typically happens in this type of workshop. And some of the venues that we use in Florida, some of the venues we used last year for our workshops remain closed due to some of those concerns. At the same time, this workshop here is a public workshop, and we've had great participation over the last 10 workshops that we've held in Florida in the first 2 weeks of the month. So this project, the South Central Florida Metroplex, will enhance safety and flight efficiency. These improvements will be valuable even before the Florida economy and aviation traffic levels recover to normal traffic volume. So last year in total, we held 17 workshops. We had 729 attendees, and we received over 1,000 comments across the state. About 170 of those came in at workshops. So we look forward to continued comments, and we hope that the session today will be effective in terms of sharing information about the project and answering your questions. Again, just to give a quick overview, the project is about updating and modernizing procedures in and out of Florida to improve the safety and efficiency and reliability of the system. Aviation's part of infrastructure for transportation, just like roadways, bridges, railways that connect our country, and the aviation infrastructure needs to be modernized as well. So some of the procedures are longer than necessary. Many of the procedures in Florida are decades old. Some of them require inefficient climbs or descents and may interfere or occupy some of the airspace as other procedures. So that all results in the need for air traffic control to vector aircraft, sometimes to keep aircraft safely separated, and that can be part of a system with irregular and less predictable flight paths, increased pilot controller communications, and things like that. So the precise flight tracks that are associated with this project will help us keep those routes automatically separated. That's a little bit about the project in general, as well as why we're looking at the project now and how we're hoping to engage with you in the workshop today. So we have a question, another one. How many changes will we see at Palm Beach? And will the Metroplex make any change to existing noise abatement procedures at Palm Beach or increase the number of flights? Matt, would you like to help with that one?
Sure, Michael, thank you. So at Palm Beach, we're going to see a total of 12 procedures that are proposed for Metroplex. That includes 6 stars or arrivals for Palm Beach and 6 SIDS or departures for Palm Beach. Boca Raton also sees 2 SIDS or departures proposed for Boca Raton Airport. Today, we actually have existing RNAV procedures at Palm Beach. For example, we have 5 SIDS at Palm Beach. And this is an example of the flight procedure board showing the slides, T-bird, and O-Lake departures. On this board here, we actually repeat the same slide procedure and T-bird procedure with minor tweaks to the waypoint Carmen that moves further east offshore and allows the airplanes to climb and get at a higher altitude to the AHAB waypoint on the shoreline. We also include the O-Lake departure, which allows aircraft to fly northwestbound on course to their destinations of Texas or California. There'll be no noise abatement procedures that'll change at Palm Beach. The same flows in and out of the airports. So thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you, Matt. Any other comments? Yes, Jim, go ahead.
I know we talked about the noise abatement, and the Citizens Committee on Noise Abatement is one of those groups that we've worked with in the past. The Citizens Committee on Airport Noise. I'm sorry, and I know that the airport has an ANOM system, a noise monitoring system. I think we've got Gary on from the airport. Gary, could you give us an update or maybe a quick brief on the noise ordinance and noise program at the airport?
Sure, I'll be glad to. We've had a program in place for several years where we followed certain procedures, and that's one of the reasons. And I was going to chime in on this question anyway. We as a county group that own and operate the airport, we're very interested in this process and ensuring that none of our procedures really change based on this. I mean, people have made decisions to buy houses, to where they live, where they send their kids to school based on where these aircraft are going. So it's very important that we stick with our existing program. And like you said, we do have an ANOM system in place. We have a full-time noise abatement officer that handles complaints on a daily basis from both PBI and our 3 GA airports. So it's really something that we really wanted to be involved in this and will continue to be involved in it until its completion and implementation, so that we make sure that we protect our citizens of Palm Beach County and continue that relationship that we have with them, the trust and the confidence that they have in us, that we'll continue to protect them and not just let changes happen without any kind of input.
All right. Great, Gary. Thank you, Jim, Matt, everybody for the tag team on that. There was a question, it may have been covered, but it was about increasing the number of flights. So that's not really what this project is about. It's about the safety and efficiency of the system and modernizing the procedures into and out of 21 airports in Florida, including Palm Beach International. All right, let me move to the next question. What are the environmental impacts from the Metroplex project? Lisa, I'd like to ask for your help with that.
I sure can help with that. The draft environmental assessment looked at many environmental categories, and some categories, the proposed procedure would not affect the environment because the resource either did not exist within the study area or the procedure would not affect them. But more information is available on that in section 4.2 of the draft EA. Now, the draft environmental document looked at 9 categories and subcategories that the procedure would potentially affect. And for this briefing, we are focusing mostly on noise, of course, and compatible land use. And information on the other categories is also available in section 4.3 of the draft EA. But it's important to note that the draft EA found no significant environmental impacts in any category. And if you would like to see a copy of that document, it's available at metroplexenvironmental.com. And once you're there, you can click on South Central Florida Metroplex, and the documents are available at that site. Thanks, Michael.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Okay, I'll keep us moving. What is the role of the airport and airlines in this project? So I'll start with that. Others may want to add to what I say, but we certainly work closely with industry on a project like this. This is a federal action. This is an FAA project. It's studied, as Lisa was just mentioning, according to the National Environmental Policy Act. So this is an FAA-led project. But at the same time, airports understand the needs of the airport as well as the input of communities. And we value that feedback. We come to the public in workshops like this, as well as before the designs even were settled a year ago to be studied in the draft environmental assessment. We came out to the public to hear from you all on the project. So there's multiple interactions with the public. And then the airline role is that they operate within the system. So they operate the aircraft, they maintain the flight management systems, and they're familiar with the routes that they're utilizing through the National Airspace System. So it's a team effort, but it's an FAA project. Does anybody want to add to that?
Yeah, Michael, we participate with the FAA, and in a technical sense is the way that we assist. We are very good at evaluating procedures in our simulators. Once they're designed, we place them in a database so that our flight management computer will recognize them. And then we test them to be sure that the aircraft capability can manage the procedures in all 3 dimensions. It can fly the lateral path, it can fly the altitudes, and it can fly the speeds that are designed into the procedure. It's our role to do this and participate to ensure that once they're published, the expectation is the airplanes will all fly them correctly. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gary.
Michael,
Scott, did you have something to add? Go ahead.
I sure do. Yeah, just to follow on with with Gary's comments there, and one of the previous workshops we talked about the design of the national airspace system and how you guys approach it, and you start with a program called Targets, and basically it designs where the waypoint is. You drop the waypoint, it gives you the lat long, and basically an X marks the spot kind of scenario, and then, as defined earlier, that's translated into a 5-letter name of a waypoint, and then, as Gary said, we take it into our airplanes, we log it into the nav database, and it becomes a very, very precise guidance system on how on a route for either arrival or departure. And what I mean by that is when you look at the required performance, and by the way, it's the system is the same thing that most carriers use to develop their own approaches within very tight parameters like possibly terrain or other issues or other items such as that. But once that takes place, the airplane itself has to be able to stay within a required navigation performance of 0.3 of a mile on this departure. In actuality, the airplane is capable of about 0.1 of a mile. And to kind of translate that into lay terms, if you look down the street and you count 7 houses down the road, that's about 1/10 of a mile. And these airplanes are so capable with their navigation that they anticipate the turns prior to reaching that waypoint. So if it's published and it's translated or logged into the airplane will fly that exact path with exact preciseness.
All right, good discussion on that.
We could add to that, Michael, from air traffic, if you would like to hear. We design these procedures based on our current RNAV procedures we have at Palm Beach today. So like we said earlier, in most cases, we're using the same exact waypoint locations that are in use today on these proposed Metroplex procedures. So you should see no change of the aircraft flying in and around Palm Beach area for arriving to Palm Beach or departing Palm Beach. Again, in most cases, the waypoints that we use for the procedures proposed are the current waypoints that are in use today for Palm Beach on our RNAV procedures that we have today. So thank you, Mike.
Matt, what's the difference then? I mean, what did we do here that updated these, if you will?
So the update of these procedures is, there's new technology available for the aircraft and the cockpit. They can load in these procedures with altitudes that are actually already encoded, where the airplane can already have a descent or a climb program on the route, so that air traffic will not have to issue that back and forth, the communication between the pilot and air traffic control. That'll help the communication between pilots and air traffic control with the standardized altitudes we have to give to descend aircraft into the airport or climb the aircraft for a departure. The less back and forth that we have to do, the better, and it's actually safer. Lessens the frequency congestion of air traffic control talking to 10, 15 aircraft on frequency and having to listen to each specific call sign and altitude that goes out. We have to ensure and make sure that everything's correct. And this procedure, the proposed procedures actually eliminate the back and forth for air traffic control and pilots. So thank you, Jim. It's a good point.
Michael, if I can just jump in.
Please, Gary.
Tag on to that. Basically what Matt just said, I mean, that's ultimately what I said in my remarks a few minutes ago. We have a great relationship with the local FAA folks here at the tower. We work with them on a daily basis with our construction projects and just the operation of the airport in general. And what Matt just said, I mean, those changes, that's why we've been involved in this process for the 2+ years that you all have been working on this, and that we've been involved in some of the public meetings and just some of the outreach. Just once again, ensuring that nothing changes around here that we haven't been fully informed of. I mean, that's why we've been holding hands with the FAA and the industry partners over the last couple of years as well. So,
very helpful. Thank you, Gary. Okay, we have a related question. It's how will the Metroplex help Florida? So maybe that's up a level, I guess. But in total, there are 106 new or amended, more efficient satellite-based and conventional air traffic control procedures that, as we've been talking about, help improve the safety and efficiency. So Metroplex helps us make the best use of the airspace and procedures based on satellite technology that ultimately, when you look system-wide, helps connect airports within Florida to other parts of the country, whether it's the Northeast or the West Coast or down to the Caribbean. It's a little bit like having that local infrastructure of on-ramps and off-ramps and on-ramps to some of the highways that would connect you to other parts of the country. The benefits for passengers are more direct routes, and that helps reduce flight delays. There's decreased congestion at airports, and there's certainly a lot of airports in close proximity in South Florida. It helps us improve the air traffic flows, and that's about safety and efficiency. And then modernizing the procedures to today's standards. So the precision and the predictable routes help reduce complexity, and we've talked about that on a couple of the answers already. Between air traffic control and the pilots, I'm not an air traffic controller or pilot, but my simple analogy that I use is it's a little bit like giving someone directions down the street, make a turn, go so far, make another turn, go a little bit further, make a turn, except in the air, it's this direction or this vector and climb and another turn and climb. These procedures allow us to basically refer to going to point A to point B. You take a path, and that's a defined path that air traffic control, the pilot, and the airplane itself are all on the same page. So that's about safety and efficiency as well, in addition to what you've heard from some of the others. So
right. Michael, I really like the on-ramp, off-ramp analogy and going to other cities, because that's really what we're doing with the entire national airspace system here, is we are modernizing the system. And, Matt talked about putting the altitudes and the speeds on the procedures. Well, an iterative process is an upgrade to the criteria and the things that we know we can do with performance-based navigation. That's really the core, the anchor for the upgrades that we are trying to do to the national airspace system. Other things that we're doing include, data communications, moving into a digital age where we can transmit clearances without having to use voice. Pilots will eventually be able to load those directly from air traffic into the flight management system. We've upgraded the air traffic control system so we can transmit digital information across the entire system and share that with the airline operators, their dispatch centers too. So it's a progressive upgrade to the entire system, where we hope to be moving into the age where we can project a trajectory of aircraft before they depart the gate, and that all of that information, that point in space information, where are you going to be, an hour from now, well, we're going to know that before the airplane leaves the gate. Could I ask Heidi to weigh in here? Because, NBAA flies some pretty, high-end airplanes too. And they partner with us on these projects also. Heidi, can you talk about NBAA's role?
Happy to, Jim. Thanks. So NBA, which is a National Business Aviation Association, represents the business or general aviation community who fly in and out of all of these same airports that our airlines use today. And a key part of our role is that, again, just like the airline community, making sure that all of these changes actually help make operations safer, more efficient. And I think they absolutely are doing that. And we partner at the very beginning of this project, very similar to NATCA controllers, the airlines, making sure that our industry has input into those changes and ensuring, again, that it produces more efficiency and safer utilization of the NAS at the end of the day.
All right. Heidi, Jim, thank you. See, I have a question. I would typically refer to Lisa, and I'm not seeing her on the screen, so I'm going to hold that one, and then I'll move to another one and come back. There's a question: has the FAA made a final decision to implement the project? So we can talk a little bit about the project timeline. Jim, you may want to jump in on this, but we published the draft environmental assessment for the proposed new routes on May 11th. That started a 60-day public comment period that closes on July 10th of 2020. So the FAA will consider and evaluate all of the questions that or comments that come in during the comment period. The draft environmental assessment identifies the FAA's proposed action. That, in simple terms, that means these are the changes that we're proposing with this project. And the public has an opportunity to review those, to provide the comments. We'll go through those comments and analyze those. No final decisions made until We consider those, and we intend to make a final determination on the project around September of this year. The best case time frame, or the earliest time frame that you would see new procedures implemented, would be in the spring or summer of 2021. Jim, anything to add to that?
Right, and Michael, we are still working on the procedures. That's why we want these comments. They are final. We're still in what we call the evaluation phase of the project. Until we have a final environmental decision on the project, a record of decision is what that's called. That's the official federal action that would be associated with it. We cannot submit these procedures for processing and implementation in the system. So it is not, it's not done yet. You know, when this phase of the process is over and is done, and if we decide to go forward with what we have right now, then that'll be probably in the fall before these are submitted to our publication and quality assurance organizations to go through that process to get them actually published.
All right, great. Thank you, Jim. So Lisa, we have a question about how did the FAA do the noise analysis for the project? And can you show us the noise tool that was in some of the intro videos?
Sure, I'll be glad to help with that as long as my internet stays stable. The draft EA modeled aircraft noise exposure for the proposed new procedures and the no action alternative under 2021 and 2026 forecasted conditions, and considered the direct, indirect, and cumulative effects of noise. The FAA's EA modeled noise, aircraft noise using a day-night average sound level. We call that DNL metric. Significant noise is defined as day-night average sound level of 65 DNL or higher. The DNL metric is the single value representing aircraft sound levels over a 24-hour period. And that includes all aircraft sound generated within that period. The DNL metric includes a 10 decibel weighting for noise events between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. And this is because it accounts for a greater, the weighting that we use, that 10 decibel weighting is used for a greater level of annoyance of nighttime noise events. So it basically equates to essentially 1 nighttime flight to 10 daytime flights. So if we can have the noise tool pulled up and we can walk through that, you can find this tool back at Florida Metroplex workshops. Again, that's Florida Metroplex workshops.com. And once you come to this website, if you click on the noise tool button, it brings you to this page. And this page basically gives you a little information about what we did here. We searched, you can search in over 122,000 grid points of noise data in across the study area for noise results that we calculated. And once you get to that page to search for your particular address or address you're interested in, you click on that search bar and start typing the address, and similar addresses will pop up there. And you click on an address and it'll bring you to a light blue map pin. And that map pin is surrounded by the little blue circles. Those are the grid points that I talked about that has the noise information there. You can look and see those 2 years I talked about, the 2021, which is the first year that the project could be implemented if we get to that point, and it's forecasted year of 2026. And you can see the results for the proposed action DNL, the no action DNL, and then the change in DNL between those two, between if we do the proposed procedures and what's actually happening at that site. And I think that is it. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're with us, Lisa, because I think I have another one for you. It's somewhat related, so we may keep that theme going. It says, I know this may sound like a silly question, but I want to understand what you said in the video. When you list the DNL for the proposed action versus a no action alternative, and that's what we just saw on the noise tool there, are you really saying this is what we predict the noise increase or decrease would be versus the current noise levels today? Can you give me some examples of noise levels that might help me better understand DNL and DB better? So two parts of that.
Two parts of that. The DNL that we talked about in that the last graphic that we had on the screen, that is if in fact we implement the procedure. That is if we start the procedure in 2021, and we also relate that to a forecasted 2026, that's 5 years out, that DNL metric is there. And I guess to better explain DNL, we have a graphic that hits on a better explanation of DNL. DNL basically is it's the standard metric that we use for all FAA studies. It's the day-night sound level over, it's an average over a 24-hour period is a better way to say it. And to compare, there's a graphic on the screen there that gives you some common outdoor sounds and compare that to common indoor sounds. And if you look at that graphic, it just basically shows how if you're outside and you're standing there and a Boeing 747 takes off, and you can compare that to an indoor sound of being at a rock band concert. Moving on down the noise level scale, and as you see that's about 110 dB. That's the noise level that you can equate that to. Then you look at a lawnmower on the outside. If you are standing about 3 feet from a lawnmower or a diesel truck at 150 feet away, and that's kind of compared. If you're inside, that's compared to a food processor or a blender, or if somebody's shouting about 3 feet away. And then if you're standing about 2 miles away from a Boeing 747 taking off, that's kind of compared. Indoor sound is kind of compared to like a vacuum cleaner. So this gives you a better. This graphic just kind of boils it down to what that sound level is like, outdoor sound versus indoor sound, and hopefully that answers the question a little better. Thanks, Michael.
Very good. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, we have a question about asking if there are any changes to the fleet mixes operating at Palm Beach International or at Boca Raton due to Metroplex changes. Any feedback from the panel on that question?
So I'll start, Michael, from air traffic standpoint. I'm sure industry is going to have a much better grasp on what they're actually going to be flying in and out of the airports years from now. As an air traffic standpoint, we don't see any change in the fleet mix. We're not creating these procedures to add more airplanes or different airplanes to these routes. They're just being published and proposed to have airplanes fly these updated, more advanced routes where they have altitudes encoded on them already, and it'll help air traffic and the pilots from a safety standpoint, trying to move them in and out of the airspace more efficiently. If the industry wants to chime in and talk about a fleet mix, that's probably a better question for them.
Yeah, Michael, for Southwest, that's easy. We fly one type of airplane, the Boeing 737, and there is no plans on changing that fleet.
Hey, Michael, I've got a question, and I don't know if we need to have Caesar from Alpha on this too, but I noticed, because we had this question come in on one of the other workshops about the PBN equipage and capability at one of the airports. So before this workshop, I went and I looked that up in one of our tools. And at Palm Beach, we've got 95 to 99% PBN equipage, meaning that that percentage of airplanes should be equipped to fly it. But we only got about something better than 91% of the instrument flight rules operations are flown under PBN. So I want to kick that over to Caesar, because I know we've talked about fleet mix before, and with the COVID-19 fallout, I know there have been some changes in fleet mix. Is that going to change what we see as far as the utilization of procedures, Caesar?
Well, I will say this, and probably Lee and definitely Heidi may have something more fleet mix is concerned, because what GA and the business aviation is doing for. But as far as the major airlines that are using Palm Beach right now, yes, there is a lot of new airplanes being ordered. For example, at my airline, we're pretty much buying everything now. It's going to be the Neo engines, which of course are quieter, more efficient. We use the Airbus. All of those are capable, and of course, like Gary said, they fly the 737. JetBlue, I know they have the Airbus equipage also, and they're also very well equipped to fly all these procedures. I'll stop in a minute and let Heidi jump in, because I know she probably wants to, but I think the big difference here is going to be not so much, like Matt already said, the tracks are pretty much going to stay the same. The big deal for us here, and I think it's a big deal for safety, is with the implementation of Metroplex procedures in VIA, for example. Once, let's say I'm flying from LaGuardia to Palm Beach in a 321 today, like we have today. It may be new, it may have the new engines, but it doesn't really matter. The equipage is there to be able to fly the procedures. The difference is that somewhere out in the ocean east of Georgia or perhaps Jacksonville, I already will know which procedure I'm going to be able to use into Palm Beach. I'll have it loaded into the flight management system. All I need to hear from Matt or Ryan at that point is when they say descend via. At that point, basically we load the lowest altitude on that procedure, and then aircraft will take into consideration the speed, the environmental conditions, the what altitude, direction, and it's going to set a descent point for me. At that point, all I need to do is start that descent, and the aircraft will give me everything that I need to cross each one of those waypoints at the right altitude, at the right speed, without any more interaction with this controller, so unless they need to take me off and put me back on for weather or safety or another aircraft or whatever. But for the most part, it'll be very predictable. We'll know exactly what we're doing, and we'll be doing it in a predetermined and predictable way. The initial fleet mix changes. On the 121 side, I think this per se is not going to cause any changes. We're already pretty much there.
Yeah, I echo that. From the business aviation side, the GA side of the house, we're also very well equipped. Our fleet is much more diverse. Obviously, we have a much broader range of capabilities, but especially in the business aviation side of that fleet that are flying these procedures under instrument conditions or instrument flight rules, we are very, very well equipped today to fly any of these procedures that are being implemented. And we do so today already. We fly a lot of our nav procedures. I think you nailed it, Caesar and Matt. You referenced this earlier, predictability. It's all about predictability from the time you take off from your destination until you land, or your departure airport to landing. You want to know what to expect, and you want to do that with as minimal voice communications and changes as able. And I think that's a big advantage of Metroplex. We're implementing procedures that allow greater predictability, enhancing safety and efficiency of the NAS. And we do that minimizing some of those voice commands, utilizing the technology and tools in the cockpit and on a controller scope. So I don't think it's so much about the fleet mix as it is about utilizing all the tools and benefits that are already there and exist and maximizing the use of all of those.
And I'll just add a little bit more from the from a kind of a major air carrier perspective, and certainly from JetBlue's perspective. The use of performance-based navigation and the new procedures that will be coming in are definitely going to be able to enhance safety and efficiency in the airspace. And as Heidi and Caesar both said, it's not so much that it changes the fleet mix as much as it allows us to use the capabilities that we already have and we've already invested in, and allows our crews to basically execute these more modern procedures, again emphasizing safety, but obviously with the efficiency gains that we expect to see.
All right, I'm just looking because everybody chimed in on that one. All right, very good. Thanks, everyone. All right, I know I'm gonna mess up a city name again. So landing traffic from Palm Beach from the east, flying over the town of
Hypoluxo.
Hypoluxo?
Hypoluxo, yeah.
Hypoluxo, my apologies. Hypoluxo, thank you. Can traffic be diverted or at least scattered over the area to avoid coming over Hypoluxo, Florida?
Sure, I can take that one.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
That area over that you're referring to south of Palm Beach, that's where a lot of our island traffic comes from to land at Palm Beach and possibly even landing at Boca Raton. So these procedures, the proposed procedures mirror what we're doing today. So if you're hearing and seeing aircraft today, chances are you'll probably hear and see aircraft tomorrow. So these new procedures don't increase or decrease. That's driven by public demand. So if you have more island traffic, you could see more aircraft flying over that area that you're referring to. But without the noise tool to see exactly the address and whatnot, I can't give you specifics on what noise track that you're referring to. Maybe Lisa can chime in on that.
We can look at the noise results in that area. If we go back to the noise tool and type in that address, and we can look. And again, you find this noise tool back at FloridaMetroplexWorkshops.com. And once you're there, you click on noise tool. And in the search bar in the top left-hand corner of the map, you can start typing your address. I think that address was 7580 Federal Highway. Lantana. And it brings you to a little map pin. And the blue circles around that area, you find the closest one and you can click on that and you can see what the DNL is now. And with the proposed action, that's if we implement these procedures, and the no action alternative is what's happening now, the DNL. And you can see there's a small change. And we're not saying that these, you won't find small increases and decreases in DNL, but what we are saying is that our analysis showed that there's no, significant increase in noise that would necessitate us doing some mitigation for those areas. There are no significant increases in noise.
So I'll jump in on that. Thank you, Lisa. That's really helpful. In terms of the project, the part of the question talks about there seems to have been an increase in the noise. So again, I want to reiterate the project, the South Central Florida Metroplex procedures have not been implemented yet. And if there are existing noise concerns, both the FAA and the airport have resources that we utilize to address existing noise. And I just want to be clear about that. So to kind of separate today's noise versus what's proposed by the project. So on the FAA side, you can learn more about noise from us and find a link to if you don't learn about the noise from our website and you want to register a complaint with the FAA, you can go to faa.gov. You can search for Southern Region, and then you'll find a link where you can click to go to our noise page, and it'll have information about what the FAA is doing. Might be helpful to show that. Thank you. So go to faa.gov, and in the search box that's there, you can put in Southern Region. And that will bring up a couple of the pages. I think it's actually the third one there. And it'll bring up information on noise complaints and inquiries. So if you click one more, there's a file a noise complaint or inquiry. There's information there on that page that talks about noise, but that's where you can come to the FAA. And I mentioned the airport. Gary, I don't know if you want to share anything more on that from an airport perspective.
Sure. We do have a noise, like I said earlier, a noise officer that handles all of our noise complaints and kind of coordinates the noise complaints with data from our ANOM system, the Airport Noise and Operations Monitoring System. That she's there 5 days a week, answers questions, comments, concerns every day. We also have a website, pbia.org, that has a noise complaint section on that. So
great.
That's easy to use as well.
All right, very good. So kind of hopefully help with some distinctions there on what has happened and how to handle existing noise. And then Lisa, you demonstrated what's being proposed, how they can see what's potentially changing with this project. Hopefully that's helpful. Thanks everyone. Okay, we have a question. Is there a map of the vicinity of the airport showing a gradient of which areas are most affected, either with more or less noise, or DNL is what's stated here? Lisa, do you want to help with that, or does?
I can try. The noise analysis is based on population centroids or geographic points based from the census data. And the latest census data that we have, as you know, was done in 2010. So that's what it's based on. That's the best available information we have. And to see the change in your area, you go back to that same website, the Florida Metroplex workshops.com, and click on the map tool, and you can type your address in the search bar to search your particular area. Now, if you want to get some additional information about the noise and everything, you can find that if you go to our metroplexenvironmental.com. If you go back to that website, you can, the document is there, the environmental document is there, and you can click on Appendix I, and it can give you additional information about the noise technical report, very technical information there. And it talks about the methodology that went into the modeling. You can find that information there. Oh, thank you. It's metroplexenvironmental.com. And once you're there, you find the South Central Florida Metroplex. And over in the left, you'll see something that says documents. And click on that, and you can find the environmental document and all the appendices, and all of those links are there. You can download it in PDF, and a quick search. It's a large document, and it's easy. Easy way to search is in the PDF tool, you can type in keywords and you can search the document there. But Appendix I, you will find the Metroplex noise technical report. And hopefully that will answer your question.
That's great, Lisa. So normally people want to see what's going on at my house or an area of interest for me. And that's why the noise dots, the noise tool helps with that. So that's where we normally point people. But if you want other maps or contours. There's some other information in that appendix Lisa mentioned. So good
And
answer. Jim, did you have something to add?
Right. Could we go back to the Metroplex environmental.com site, please, with the documents down in the bottom, that supplemental information or supplemental materials? So this is where some people like to look at the Google Earth version of where the procedures are. And although this doesn't give the depiction that we have on the Metroplex, the Florida Metroplex workshops.com site, you can download the procedures into Google Earth. They're KMZ files, and you can look at the tracks themselves, just the tracks, not the radar track data, but you can look at the tracks overlaid on Google Earth, and it gives you a little bit different depiction. Some people like to see that. This also has the noise assessment. So there's a noise dot capability in this, but it's really computer intensive. It's really memory intensive. And some people are a little challenged using that because it takes a while to load. If you have a less capable machine, it might not be as user friendly as just using the Florida Metroplex workshops.com version of it.
Great, thanks, Jim. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, we have another question. How will the changes on approaches or departures at Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami impact the airspace over Lantana Airport in terms of ceiling levels for aircraft arriving or departing Lantana? So I may,
sure,
Matt, you want to help with that? Matt, Ryan, go ahead.
You can start, Ryan. Sure, I can take that one. So I can speak to the Palm Beach procedures. I can't speak to the Fort Lauderdale procedures because Matt and I were not involved with that. But I can just tell you a little background. Palm Beach International is surrounded by Class Charlie airspace. And what that means is in order for aircraft to come in and out of the Class Charlie airspace, they have to be talking to air traffic control. And there's some other rules and whatnot. There is a cutout around Lantana Airport. They do a lot of flying with smaller aircraft, and those aircraft may not be getting air traffic services. So the Florida Metroplex project, it did not change the Class Charlie airspace or the cutout around Lantana, and we don't have any procedures, new procedures for Lantana. It basically just addressed the procedures coming in and out of Palm Beach, and those mirror, again, what we're doing today. So there should be no changes as far as the airspace around Lantana, the ceiling, or anything like that. Matt, did you want to chime in on that as well?
I think you covered most of it there, Ryan. I was going to say on the arrival and departure side for Palm Beach Airport, again, we're going to use the same flows and procedures we have today, just the upgraded technology and the procedures for the proposed procedures. So there should be no change at all for Lantana affecting the Palm Beach arrivals and departures or the airspace itself, as you talked about. So, thank you, Ryan.
All right.
And,
Anyone else?
Jim, did you want to speak about Fort Lauderdale, since you probably have a better idea about them? I think.
I mean, it's not really our spot to say. The procedures for Fort Lauderdale, Miami would not affect Lantana at all. They're so far away from that airspace and that airport. But there's really nothing we can add about Fort Lauderdale, Miami based on the Lantana airspace. It's just they don't interact.
Right. No, I think I agree with you, Matt. Anybody else have anything to add? Jim, any thoughts on that? I mean, those procedures out of Fort Lauderdale, Miami are going to be at such a higher altitude. I think the key point is the airspace, the Class Charlie, and the shape of that didn't change. So
yeah, I think that's where the question's kind of hitting there. They're asking about the ceiling levels of aircraft arriving and departing Lantana, and they're going to be such lower altitudes, 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet. Arriving in Lantana, that a guy out of Miami or Fort Lauderdale is at 15,000 feet, and it would have no impact at all.
Jim?
Michael, I could just add one little thing to that. It's a good point about the airspace, because all of these instrument flight procedures are required to be contained within controlled airspace of some type, different categories of airspace. And occasionally we do have to make changes to airspace, and a couple of places in this, not at Palm Beach, but a couple of places in the project, we are making a couple of changes to the shape of the airspace, or I'll call it the ownership, who controls the particular piece of airspace so that they can contain the procedures that we've got in there.
Okay, so we have another question. Is there any land acquisition or aviation rights needed to implement the proposed procedures? Jim, you probably want to jump in on that.
Well, I do, because aviation rights is one of my favorite things. It really is. I'm a little bit versed in that category. So no, there's no land acquisition in this, and I think we talk about that in the impact categories, that there is no surface disturbance on this. Aviation rights is an interesting topic, because the administrator of the FAA is charged with managing the national airspace system. So that's instrument flight procedures, controlled airspace. So the administrator has purview over the entire national airspace system. There are states, and I think Florida is one of them, where the state courts have held that citizens have aviation rights, or the right to the airspace for a certain distance or height over their homes or over their property. So I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how many court cases there have been with the federal government going to court about aviation rights over someone's home or someone's personal property, but there is no change in the operation of the national airspace system associated with this, and no change on the ground associated with this.
Okay, thank you, Jim. So remind folks, if you want to text a question to us, you can use 949-478-0253, 949-478-0253, or you can use the Q&A button in Zoom, or one of the other links if you're on some of the other social media sites like Facebook or YouTube. All right, we have a question. Will we have a concentration of airplane traffic, as I've heard about with other similar projects? I live near 441 west of Palm Beach, and I have a lot of planes over my house already. Any thoughts on that area from air traffic? And then we can maybe address more generally.
I could start with that one, Michael. We can bring up the East Flow Arrivals Board for Palm Beach Airport. That area of 441 west of Palm Beach, depending on where you're living, you're about 6 or 7 miles west of Palm Beach Airport, and that's just about the area we're turning airplanes off of the actual arrivals. If you look on this graphic here, the pink lines are actual flight tracks of airplanes that are being turned off the arrivals and landing and getting lined up with the runway at Palm Beach. That's not going to change with the proposed procedures. Airplanes will still use that same area to turn and get lined up with the runway. So you're still going to see the same amount of airplanes landing Palm Beach. That is our predominant flow, is east flow operation at Palm Beach. So that's where we're mainly on this flow at Palm Beach for the winds. We get a sea breeze at Palm Beach majority of the time. So again, depending on the area you live, north or south of that actual arrival track, you're still going to see the same amount of airplanes being turned in to get lined up with the runway. So, thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Matt. Jim?
Yeah, could this is a great board. And I think it shows an impact. So I'd like to ask a question about the captain arrival. I noticed this earlier when I was looking at the video too.
Sure.
Track that goes down to Juneau.
Yeah, so today we currently have arrival procedures that mirror the Captain and Clement, where they both merge at Fairway. So we're getting fed 2 streams at Palm Beach off the ocean, where arrivals are basically merging at one point at Fairway and the same altitude. So we have to get the airplanes lined up the same altitude and in trail to go in and get lined up for the runway and be separated to land at the airport. So that track from Captain going direct to Juneau is an air traffic controller taking the airplane that's on the Captain arrival and shortcutting him to Juneau to make him number 1 ahead of the guy who's on the Clement, who's just behind him maybe. And that's a way we can separate the airplanes to get them in line, or one in front of the other if they're tied. And that will continue to happen as well with Metroplex proposed procedures. The same effects are going to happen. We have to stay within a certain defined airspace. If you start taking the airplane from Captain and going more southwest bound, you're in someone else's airspace and you can't be there. There's other departures, other airplanes, other areas you cannot be. So that's why we use that track Captain to Juneau. That's the same track we're going to use today, as well as the proposed procedures. So that's a good point, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there was a question about that area, 441 west of Palm Beach. Do we want to show the noise tool for that? Lisa, do you mind walking us through that?
Sure. If we go right back to FloridaMetroplexWorkshops.com. And once you're at that website, you just click on the noise tool button and it brings you to this page. And to specifically search your area in the search bar, down in the top left-hand corner of the map, you can type your address. And do you have an address for that? If you have an address near that area, we can just zoom in a little. Well, if not, it's okay. Oh, there we are. Once you start typing an address, similar addresses will pop up, and you can just click on that address, and it'll bring you to that area. And then you just locate the nearest little blue circle around, and you can see.
You keep zooming out from there. If this is the actual address for the actual comment, we can see where they're kind of based or located near that flight path, and see kind of where they're at. So that's Southern Boulevard to the north, and the airport is located just off of Southern Boulevard. So it looks like you're already close to the airport in that same area. So again, I think maybe the same amount of airplanes.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Matt. And Lisa, good. I appreciate that. So that shows how you can look at what the project potential change could be, a small increase, a small decrease. And you can see that in the noise tool, what we're proposing with the project.
But it's important also to note that across the the entire study area, and according to our significance thresholds, this project has no significant or reportable noise for, and just like Michael said, you might see small increases and small decreases, but they don't rise to the level of significance per our order. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So there's a question here about why can't planes climb faster to higher altitudes quickly and reduce noise impacts on the ground? Probably a couple talking points on that. Anybody from a pilot perspective? Caesar, Heidi? Maybe Heidi first, and then we'll come to you, Caesar.
Happy to jump in there, Michael. So, you know, I liken this to driving our car on a road, right? So we can always get somewhere faster than what the posted speed limit would potentially allow. I can drive 80, I can get there quicker, I can dodge and weave traffic, right? And maybe it wouldn't be the safest trip. It probably would make the passengers in the back seat a little bit nauseous, but we get there quicker, right? Same is true with an airplane. So when we're departing out of places like Florida where the heat is a bit more excessive, it impacts the performance of your aircraft. So typically business jet, we could climb really quick. We could skyrocket right up to altitude. But we have to take into account a number of other factors. That heat, which changes the performance of our aircraft, the passengers in the back, and the compression of my cabin, and am I going to pop their eardrums when I climb at a rate of 2,000 feet per minute? All of those things are factors in getting to altitude, along with the complexity of all of the other arrivals and departures into that airspace. So again, you could dodge and weave. Would it be safe? Is it smart? No. And controllers are metering that and helping us do that safely and navigate the other traffic. But, along with performance, weather, a calm ride, addressing the safety of the passengers in the back, those all are factors in getting to altitude. So noise is certainly one of those factors. We as an operator want to be a good citizen. We want to minimize the impact to communities and those around the airport, but we also have to make sure that we're doing so safely in alignment with the performance capabilities of our aircraft.
Thanks, Heidi. Caesar, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I can just add a little bit just to put it into the air carrier perspective. And just like Heidi said, I mean, we need to operate aircraft, number one, safe. That's our number one concern. But we also want to be good citizens. So we all want to get up in the air and get it as we possibly can. Now, if I'm operating, let's say I'm moving an empty Airbus out of Florida on a cool day, I have 7,000 feet per minute climb. I take that Airbus 321 out of Las Vegas on a summer day, fully loaded, coming to the coast, and not anywhere close to that. So what does that tell us is that the environment, the temperature, the load that we're putting at that aircraft has a significant change in aircraft is capable of being able to climb as far as climb rate is. Now, we want to get up there as safely as we can, but in most places, especially busy and congested airspace, there's also the inbound traffic. And more than likely, we're going to have to underneath those arrivals that are trying to get on their downwind. So we can't just climb from the surface all the way to 37,000 feet. There's going to have to be places with ATC so that we can blend in with the rest of the traffic. It's going to have to down somewhere. But all in all, taking all that into consideration, yeah, we'd like to get up and high as soon as we possibly can, but in a safe and responsible manner.
Great points, both of you. Jim, from an official Metroplex perspective, safe and efficient, precise, well-defined routes are the opposite of dodge and weave, right?
You know, if I could add on to Caesar's comments here too, and you know, as I mentioned on one of the earlier meetings, you know, we first of all, I live in South Florida. I live on the departure path of Fort Lauderdale and the inbound landing traffic under Heidi's airplanes. By the way, thank you for keeping them quiet. And but to that point, we start with noise mitigation before we ever leave the gate. You know, we taxi to the end of the runway, and we get out to the end of the runway and we employ derated thrust takeoffs. It's beneficial both to the air carrier for fuel savings, but it's also beneficial to the close-in neighborhoods. Each of the profiles that we developed, they're all, there's no such thing as a non-noise abatement profile anymore. They're all noise abatement profiles, depending on where you clean up a little further away or a little closer in. We take all that into consideration with getting thrust off the airplane as soon as possible. With the thrust reduction comes a noise reduction. So even intermediate climbs are derated when you go from, say, an altitude, say at 5,000 feet, climb to 10,000 feet, and air traffic control gives us the ability to climb the airplane. We don't go to max thrust. We don't push the throttles all the way to the wall. Those derates are still incorporated into the climb thrust. Again, helping mitigate noise close in and distant, even distant noise. So I could go on and on, but I think that's probably enough for right now. But I want to leave it with where all the carriers that are on here are very cognizant of the neighborhoods because we all live in them. So thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Right, so we have, I think this may be our last question. How long is this project good for? When will you be changing things again? Jim, do you want to help with that?
Certainly, Michael, I'd be happy to weigh in. These procedures will be good indefinitely, theoretically. We don't have any changes to come back and do another round of Metroplex projects. We will assess the effectiveness of the procedures in what we call post-implementation, just if they're working out the way we wanted them to. If they're not flying as we expected, or we see that there's a problem, a safety problem, or something unanticipated, then we do a post-implementation adjustments to those procedures. So, if I look at the procedures around Palm Beach and what I could expect, I was part of the project where we built some of these procedures a while ago when I had Ryan's hair. So if you want to take a guess how long ago that was, and they've been flying pretty much like we built them back then. So I would not expect a lot of changes in Palm Beach, but we're prepared to do that if we need to.
All right. Any other comments on that one? I think that brings us to the end of the workshop. So I want to thank everyone for participating. I want to thank those of you who asked questions. I hope our answers were informative for you this afternoon. I do want to take time to thank the specialists for providing expertise and our entire FAA communications team and all the others who supported this workshop in the background. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge our industry representatives who joined us this afternoon to contribute your perspectives to the discussion. So thank you all. As a reminder, your questions today are not part of the legal record for the draft environmental assessment. To comment for the record, please go to the comments tab on floridametroplexworkshops.com. You can also email us or send us a written comment, and those addresses are also available on the comments tab on that same website, floridametroplexworkshops.com. Again, the comment period is open until July 10th of 2020. After the comment period closes, the FAA will consider and review all substantive comments received during the comment period. The agency expects to issue an environmental determination in September 2020. This afternoon's workshop is being recorded. It'll be available for playback on this website tomorrow, along with the recording for the prior workshop for Palm Beach. If you want to share that with friends or neighbors or family, feel free to do so. And again, that comment period is open until July 10th. So that concludes our workshop today. Thank you again for joining us.